Minglava. Today I am going to give a lecture on reason sentences, which is part of synthetic theory in English Language Studies 6. Its module number is Eng-4111. Here, we will look closely at these sentences and how these sentences can be analyzed within transformational grammar. Reason sentences provide an important example of sentences involving a non-canonical subject. Here, we will look more closely at these sentences and consider how they can be analyzed. We will begin by looking at some basic data. Then, we will consider how reason sentences can be analyzed within transformational grammar and in particular within P&P. P&P means principles and parameters theory. Next, we will consider how they can be analyzed within HPSG, head-driven phrase structure grammar. Finally, we will look at some further examples of reason sentences. One point we can note immediately is that there will be few new ideas in this chapter. Most of the ideas that are important here were introduced in the previous chapter. We can distinguish two kinds of reason sentence. One type involves subject, one of a small class of verbs, which we can call reason verbs, and an infinitive with no overt subject. The other type involves a subject, a form of be, one of a small class of adjectives, which we can call reason adjectives, and an infinitive with no overt subject. The first type is exemplified by in sentence 1 and in sentence 2, and the second type by in sentence 3 and in sentence 4. Hopes seem to be irritating, hopes tends to be irritating, and hopes likely to be irritating, hopes certain to be irritating. In both types, the subject functions as the subject of the infinitive. Moreover, it's the infinitive and not the reason verb or adjective which determines the main properties of the subject. Thus, if the infinitive requires a subject with a theta role, the subject has the same theta role. Similarly, if the infinitive requires a dummy subject, the reason verb or be will require a dummy subject. Thus, the data in sentence 5 and in sentence 6 parallel the data in sentence 7. It seems to be easy to annoy roads. Hope seems to be easy to annoy roads. It's likely to be easy to annoy roads. Hopes is likely to be easy to annoy roads. It is easy to annoy roads. Hopes is easy to annoy roads. In the same way, if the infinitive allows a dummy subject, so will the reason verb or be. The data in sentence 8 and in sentence 9 parallel those in sentence 10. There seems to be a dragon in the wood. Hope seems to be a dragon in the wood. There's likely to be a dragon in the wood. Hope's likely to be a dragon in the wood. There's a dragon in the wood. Hope's a dragon in the wood. If the infinitive allows a clauses subject, the reason verb or be will allow a clauses subject. Here, the data in sentence 11 and in sentence 12 parallel those in sentence 13. That he is a fool seems to be obvious. That he is a fool seems to be obvious. That he is a fool is likely to be obvious. That he is a fool is likely to be obvious. That he is a fool is obvious. That he is a fool is obvious. Finally, if the infinitive allows the subject with an idiomatic interpretation, the reason verb will also allow such subject. Thus, in sentence 14 and in sentence 15 parallel, in sentence 16, the cat seems to be out of the bag. The cat is likely to be out of the bag. The cat is out of the bag. Any account of reason sentences must account for these data. We can now consider how reason sentences can be analyzed within a transformational approach. As we have seen, within such an approach, they will be derived from more abstract structures by a movement process. If we assume with P and P that movement processes leave behind traces, we will have the following derivations for in sentence 1 and in sentence 3. You can look at these on the slide. These structures involve the standard P and P assumption that infinitive 2 is a member of the Eng category introduced in chapter 6. On the assumption that the syntactic and semantic properties of a constituent are determined by its underlying position, the analysis shows that it's the infinitive and not the reason verb or adjective which determines the main properties of the subject. Why are such derivations possible? Within classical transformational grammar, they will be possible because a rule which we can call the reason transformation says so. The problem with this approach is that it raises various questions to which it can provide no illuminating answers. Firstly, we might ask the following question: why is movement possible in reason sentences? The only answer is that the reason transformation allows this. This is not a very interesting answer. Secondly, we may ask the following: why is movement necessary in reason sentences? In other words, we might ask why we do not have sentences like the following: it seems Hobbes to be irritating. It is likely Hobbes to be irritating. All we can say in answer to this is that the reason transformation is an obligatory rule. Again, this is not a very satisfying answer. Finally, we might ask the following: why is movement restricted as it is? More precisely, we might ask why we can derive the S structure in sentence 23 but not the S structures in sentence 24 and in sentence 25. Hobbes' infinitive seems S structure empty category infinitive to like roads. Roads infinitive seems S structure Hobbes to like empty category infinitive. Hobbes' infinitive seems clauser phrase that S structure empty category infinitive likes roads. All we can say is that the rule allows the movement that's involved in sentence 23, but not the movement that's involved in sentence 24 and in sentence 25. Once more, this is not a very satisfying answer. Thus, the classical transformational approach to reason sentences is unsatisfactory in much the same way as the classical transformational approach to passives. The P&P approach to reason sentences is very similar to the P&P approach to passive sentences. As we have seen, P&P assumes a very general movement rule. Move alpha and a variety of grammatical principles that interact with it to determine what kinds of movement actually occur. All the principles that are in connection with passives are also relevant in connection with reason sentences. We can look first at how P and P answers the first of our questions. Why is movement possible in reason structures? The crucial assumption here is the following. Reason verbs and adjectives have no external theta rule, that is, they do not assign a theta rule to their subjects. Some evidence for this comes from the fact that reason sentences often have related sentences with a dummy it in subject position. Dummy it appears in a subject position to which no theta rule is assigned. For example, parallel to sentence 1 and sentence 3, we have sentence 27 and sentence 28. It seems that Hobbes irritating. It's likely that Hobbes will be irritating. The assumption makes reason verbs and adjectives rather like passive participles and unaccusative verbs. It means that movement into subject position in a reason sentence will not result in an NP with two theta rules. Hence, there will be no violation of the constraint that no NP can have more than one theta rule. We turn now to our second question. Why is movement necessary in reason structures? Here, the following assumption is crucial. Reason verbs and adjectives do not license case. This makes reason verbs and adjectives even more like passive participles and unaccusative verbs. Given this assumption, the initial structure in sentence 17 and in sentence 18 involve an NP with phonetic content and a position where no case is licensed. In both cases, then, movement is necessary to avoid a violation of the case filter. The requirement that an NP with phonetic content must have properly licensed case. Finally, we can consider our third question, why is movement restricted as it is? More precisely, why can we derive the S structure in sentence 23, but not the S structures in sentence 24 and in sentence 25? We repeat the crucial examples. Hobbes infinitive seems, S structure, empty category, infinitive to like roads. Roads infinitive seems, S structure, Hobbes to like empty category, infinitive. Hobbes infinitive seems, clause phrase that, S structure, empty category, infinitive, likes roads. The important point to note is that these examples are just like the passive examples that we considered in the last chapter, namely the following. Trumper is believed, S structure, empty category, infinitive to like roads. Roads infinitive is believed, S structure, trumper to like empty category, infinitive. Trumper infinitive is believed, clause phrase that, S structure, empty category, infinitive, likes roads. We can explain 23 and 24 in just the same way as these examples. That is, we can attribute the facts to the following constraints. An anaphor must be a bound within its binding domain. Remember that we have defined a bound and binding domain as follows. A category is a bound if it is co-indexed with a C commanding category in an A position, subject, object of a preposition, or specifier of noun phrase. The binding domain for an anaphor is the minimal, that is, lowest S containing the anaphor, or in the case of an anaphor in subject position in an exceptional or small clause, the minimal S containing the associated verb. To account for the data, we simply need to assume that reason sentences contain an exceptional clause whose subject is associated with the preceding verb, although the preceding verb does not license case. Given this assumption, the trace in sentence 23 will be a bound within its binding domain, just like the trace in sentence 30. But sentence 24 and sentence 25 will contain a trace which is not a bound within its binding domain, just like sentence 31 and sentence 32. Hence, sentence 33 will allow sentence 23 while ruling out sentence 24 and sentence 25, just as it allows sentence 30 while ruling out sentence 31 and sentence 32. There's one more point that we should note here. As we saw at the outset, reason sentences may contain not a reason verb, but a reason adjective. To accommodate such examples, we must assume that the subject of an exceptional clause complement of a reason adjective is associated with the adjective, although the adjective does not license case. Then, if we replace associated verb in sentence 35 by associated verb or adjective, we will correctly allow examples with a reason adjective. Now we've come to the end of our lecture. Thank you for paying attention.